Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
All of our guests today, including Jack Michaels, voice of the Oilers, sponsored by Passant Motors. May Day, it's May Days at Passant Motors. Purchase a vehicle in the month of May and choose one of 3 great promotional options. May Days, only at Passant Motors. Learn more at BASANTmotors.com. All right. Oilers winning Game 7 against L.A. on Saturday. So much fun to watch amongst all the games on the weekend of the National Hockey League playoffs. The Oilers will now face the Flames, or as I've got written in my notes, the Oilers will now face the Oilers. But it is the Flames, Game 1, Wednesday in Calgary. Joining us now, voice of the Oilers, Jack Michaels. How are you, sir?
Good. Preparation is key. I like it.
It really is. Well, I'm not going to say I'm confused, but there's so much going on, Jack. There's so much fun on the weekend. What was it like to be in the city of Edmonton on Saturday before the game and after the game?
Well, I mean, it had been a long time since Edmonton had played host to a Game 7. I mean, it had been 32 years, and now it's 31 years since the last Battle of Alberta. I mean, it was electric. It was an unreal atmosphere. It was like a beehive. I mean, it was so loud continuously through. There was just this constant hum, a cacophony of sound, if you will. I mean, it was just ridiculous. I mean, it was a great experience. I think for Oiler fans, they'd been waiting a long time. There was massive consternation after the Oilers fell behind 3-2 in a series where they did enter the favorites against Los Angeles. And I think, quite frankly, a lot of recent playoff demons were exercised with that Game 7 victory, particularly in the manner in which the Oilers got it done, guys. They had lost a long stretch of close games, often into overtime. All 4 against Winnipeg were close. The 3 losses against Chicago in the bubble, the game winner came in the third period. And they lost Game 7 against Anaheim in 2017 by a score of 2-1, a game they at one point led 1-0. So they hadn't squeezed out the stuff of victory in close playoff games in a long time. And for them to win and win in the manner in which they did, I think, if there's a collective monkey out there, it's off that core's back, and when I speak of the core, I speak of those veterans from 2017, like McDavid, Draisaitl, Nurse, Cassian, Chris Russell. They hadn't gotten it over the finish line, especially in close games in the playoffs. Now that they've done that, I think you've got a certain feel of liberation around the team that did not exist prior.
I thought he went to another level on the weekend. I thought there was so much
Meaning
grit.
McDavid?
Yes, but so much grit to his game.
Yeah.
How would you describe Connor McDavid's Game 7 performance, Jack?
Well, Donnie, it's an excellent point. I mean, I called it the best games he's ever played. I would say Game 6 in Los Angeles is the best game he's ever played. I don't want to hear about hat tricks or 5- and 6-point nights. I'm not interested in that. The best game he's ever played was Game 6 in Los Angeles. I mean that. And, I have it on pretty good authority that I might be onto something there. So, I would just say this to you. I think he's been better defensively throughout the season than people give him credit for. I would suggest to you, gentlemen, that he's made more plays inside the opposing blue paint than he has in his blue paint rather than the opposing blue paint this year. I really mean that. He's cleared pucks out. He's made backtracking plays. He's made all the subtle plays that a certain number 87 in Pittsburgh gets a lot of credit for. I think it's time that we look past the 123 points or whatever and look a little bit deeper at the finer points of his game. And certainly if you watch Game 6 in Los Angeles, you'd concur in terms of elite offensive hockey and two-way hockey. No one's ever done it better.
Jack, I want to talk about former Vancouver Giant, Evander Kane, 7 goals, 9 points. I don't know if you saw that coming, but talk about his series so far. His playoffs so far.
He's been magnificent. He's been magnificent. I mean, he's he's been everything he's been advertised. And I would take it back to the regular season. I mean, no one's produced at a level like this coming in cold mid-season since the great one. Remember when he missed the first 40 games of the 92-93 campaign? No one has scored as many goals as Evander Kane has since that season. Wow. I mean, he's been electric. He's been, playing at a 45 to 50 goal pace, and he's been the finisher that so many NHL teams lack. There's not many guys out there with a shot-first mentality. It's why David Perron has been so invaluable for St. Louis's third go-around with the Blues, is there's not many guys out there who look to shoot first. And Evander Kane doesn't just finish. Have you ever seen him tap it in or shoot a wrist shot in? He powers the puck in the net. He finishes, and that puck smashes against the back of the net. The empty netter against LA, I mean, he buried that sucker. He didn't guide it in.
Oh, big time.
And that typifies his entire game. He is a presence in and around the opposing blue paint, the likes of which you just don't see that often in the National Hockey League. He finishes, and he's a terror. He's a guy that can get away with a lot of stuff because what are you going to do about it? And Edmonton needed some of that jam. Zach Hyman provides some of that in terms of getting to the greasy areas and being a power forward that way. But Evander Kane adds that physical element where he's going to cross-check you in the back of the neck, and if you have a problem with it, he's more than willing to drop the gloves. And I think that will come into play a little bit against Calgary, which is a more physical team than Edmonton. This is not, your dad's battle of Alberta, where the Oilers probably had the edge in physicality as well as talent. I think Calgary's got the more physical group this time around, but the presence of Kane and Cassian do negate that to some degree. And Evander Kane can play. Yeah. And he can play in a big way, and he can finish in a big way. And in a league where goal scoring is always at a premium, a guy who is not afraid to bury it and not afraid to shoot it from anywhere it's in high demand. It's why he's going to get a contract next year from somebody that's probably longer than a 1 or 2 year deal.
What can you tell us about Leon Draisaitl's health, Jack? I know you're not a doctor.
He's going to play. I think it's very possible. Number one, he had an illness. He wasn't feeling well, non-COVID, but he was sick for the last couple of games of that series. I think it's quite possible he's got upper and lower body injuries that he's dealing with. I think he's playing – he probably played the back end of that LA series at no better than 60%. I think the extra day with Edmonton and Calgary waiting until Wednesday to play helps the Oilers to some degree in terms of reviving Draisaitl to some degree of health, but he is not entering this series at 100%. But I'm sure there are players on both sides who can say that.
Any chance the Battle of Alberta doesn't live up to the hype?
I think there's always a chance. Even you look back at 1988, Calgary had beaten Calgary had beaten Edmonton in 1986, and the Flames were very much on the cusp. But you're exactly right. Edmonton was the lower seed, as you'll recall, in that series. And as soon as Gretzky's shot whistled over Mike Vernon, the series was essentially over. The Oilers put him away in 4 straight. I think there's always a chance, and I think if there's, one thing about this year's playoffs that I think you'd concede, I didn't have 5 of the 8 series going 7 games. I just didn't. Now I had Dallas beating Calgary. I got that one essentially right in the sense that it was a lot closer than many people thought, but there were some other series that went much longer than I anticipated, and Edmonton and LA was one of them. So I don't think you can predict how long it's going to go, but I will say this. I'd be surprised if it didn't meet most people's expectations. I really do. It may not go the full 7, but I think we're going to have a highly competitive series between two teams that legitimately don't like one another. And if you think I'm just hyping the Battle of Alberta, we'll flip back to February of 2020 and tell me that they like each other.
Yeah. Kachuk versus Cassian. Did you just say that you picked Dallas over Calgary and you got that one right? And you got that one right? You come from the Rick Dollywall School of Gambling?
It's Monday. I always got that excuse. It's Monday.
I meant close series as kind of what I meant. But you're talking to an only child. And the one thing about only children that I can, there's a lot of stereotypes out there that I don't agree with, but one I will have to concede is we always think we're right, and we've never lost an argument, and we're always the smartest people in the room.
Yeah. I like that.
I'll have to check the score again and see if you got it right, Jack. Thanks for this. Appreciate it. And, man, I can't imagine how much fun you and the whole province of Alberta is going to have the next couple of weeks. We hope it's a couple of weeks. We don't want any sweeps here.
I just hope the province is still intact after this series. I think there's a good chance Canada might have to bring in some reinforcements and maybe create a new territory after this series.
All the best, Jack. Appreciate it.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for having me on.
No problem.